Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and you are in for a treat today. Why? Because I'm in for a treat today because I have as my guest Adam Goslin. Adam, first of all, welcome to the podcast. Adam, could you share with our listeners your professional background?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here. Sure. I came up the ranks of IT. I started as a developer. That was a short-lived experience, and then I moved into more project management, team management in the IT arena. I kind of had that, which way do you want to go? Do you want to stick as a gearhead, or do you want to move up the ranks of management? So I chose management. So started leading teams of developers. Did that through several different organizations. Primarily governing over application development teams, doing application development for various organizations. That all culminated in an organization where I was the VP of IT and infrastructure for a supply chain e-commerce company. And that's when my boss came by and said, for whatever reason, he decided to print it. But he printed the first version of the PCI DSS, drops it on my desk. It was a stack of about 4 inches of paper, and said, "We need to get compliant with this." And so that was my entree, if you will, into the security and compliance arena. As I was in that organization, I basically had to go literally from what's PCI to trying to get it all figured out, and working with an assessor that they'd chosen, doing a lot of phone a friend, Googling, trying vendors, fail, trying another vendor, fail. We'll just go build it ourselves type of an approach. And that extravaganza in total probably lasted about 18 months or so. But at the end of it, we ended up submitting to Visa and being deemed PCI compliant. That was a long time ago, and back in a time when you got compliant, you'd actually get a
Adam,
letter
I'm
from
always
Visa
intrigued
on their
to visit
letterheads,
with founders
congratulating you on your
several different
compliance.
reasons.
So
Um,
it was quite the adventure, shall
around
we
what
say.
led you to found your company. And you can be the mad scientist locked away in a castle that developed something with a eureka moment, which of course, that's all fiction. You can be, what intrigues me though, is when someone who looks at the exact same thing I do and sees something different. There's people who see a market opportunity and want to move to exploit that opportunity. There's people who see a market need to maybe do something quicker, better, more efficiently, and move to fill that need with their own company product or service. Where would you say you shake out in that, or is it a little bit of all of the above?
My adventure was interesting because it was kind of born out of experience. So with me just going through that 18, what I call monstrously painful months trying to figure my way through it, keeping in mind I'd been in IT for my entire career to that point. And one of the things that I learned through going through that experience was I learned probably three main things. One, despite being in IT for all of that period of time, just how little I knew about security and compliance. I didn't hold my feet too much to the fire going, I'm just a member of management. What was more startling, though, was the folks that were on my team that were really good developers, system architects, network engineers, day-by-day support people. Just how little they knew about security and compliance was startling. And the third element that I learned was just how little help there was in the marketplace. So I decided from that experience to basically walk away from working for somebody else initially, made the decision to go with a couple of partners, start our own thing, and go try to help people in the security and compliance space. And I spent about 3 years doing security and compliance consulting engagements. I did those across PCI, HIPAA, NIST, SOC, ISO, and a bevy of other standards. But about 3 years in, with my background in application development, I was seeing all of these consistencies. Like I was having to manage my engagements with spreadsheets. And I was seeing consistencies across all of these various different certifications. And what I did is I originally went to the business partners and said, "Hey, I've got an idea. Let's make a system that'll help to manage this stuff better." And I was promptly told we're not doing that. But if I wanted to, I could do it in nights and weekends. So I said, "Sure, no problem." So I pulled together a bunch of people that I knew, and it was kind of the real traditional story of how things, these little ideas start. It was four dudes in a room above a garage, sitting around a whiteboard and spending time just designing out a better way to manage these compliance engagements, because it was so astronomically painful to do with an Excel sheet. And I don't know, by the time I got to about the 5-year mark with the partners, I walked away from that. I started a little company called Total Compliance Tracking. We had spent about 2 years kind of designing the bones of what is now the TCT portal. We spent about 1.5 years building the first iteration or version of it, while continuing to do security and compliance consulting, and then went about launching the TCT portal. We launched that in 2015 and have been kind of up running and doing that ever since. Back to your original question of why, what led me to go do this, is honestly, I like helping people, and I really wanted to help people with their management of compliance. I knew there was a better way to go about doing it. Most certainly, I wanted to build a system that would make my world better, but as it turns out, it's a system
Our
that would
flavors of
also make
compliance just a little bit different. Mine is more anti-corruption,
So that's the
money laundering,
that's
that
the
sort of
answer
thing.
for
Yours,
kind of
data
what led
privacy,
to it,
data
if you will.
protection, data security. But your marketing is one of the most unique I've seen because of some of the phrases you use. And in my world, people may think these things, but they certainly don't say them in their marketing. Things like how TCT makes compliance suck less. And I think many of my business partners have considered that phrase over the year. Peace of mind, I think, is something everyone's comfortable with. But why is your marketing strategy designed to literally help compliance suck less? Because there really is a question in here. What you talked about when you originally were exposed to compliance became a market differentiator for your company, to the point where Visa said you are now compliant and we will use you because of that. So I see, for a vendor or a company in the supply chain, being compliant as a true market differentiator and not really something that has to suck less.
Yeah. Well,
Really?
in terms of the market, one of the things you'll learn about me is that I'm very, very direct, very to the point. There's not a lot of mystery. And so it was a good part of the reason why, honestly, what the fun part about this is that it took me years to convince the sales and marketing crew to get on board with kind of what I was thinking. And after we kind of tried to be the prim proper thing in the earlier days and whatnot, but I kept pressing I just want to be real about this, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. It's about, we've got a kind of a badge on the website. This is making compliance management suck less since 2013. We went to one of the PCI user conferences. And when we showed up to this PCI user conference, it was just after I'd convinced the crew to come on board with me. We ended up it was around the time they were going to be releasing kind of PCI version 4. And so on the backdrop of the booth, I literally put up there, it was something along the lines of "Get your PCI DSS V4 shit together," on the back of the booth. And you know what the funniest part about it was, is that members of the PCI Council were coming over to our booth and taking selfies in front of the backdrop of the booth and plastering that out. For anybody that's really interactive with us, knows me, how we do, we're just real. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like I said, I got into this space to try to help people. It was real startling realization just how little people I knew about security and compliance kind of walking into it. And with total compliance tracking, we really fill the need for any organization that's subject to compliance or that is assisting compliant customers or that's performing assessment or audit functions against literally any security or compliance standard anywhere across the globe. Some example certifications. If you go to the TCT website, you can go to certifications and then all certifications, and that's a current list of all the certifications we have. When we first started, we ended up centering on PCI DSS just because it was intimately familiar to us and whatnot. But from there, we just started adding standards and certifications. And we'd add HIPAA, then we'd add SOC, then we'd add a flavor of ISO, another flavor of NIST. The next thing I know, I've got, and this is one of the things that we tell our clients, is that, look, if you're a paying client of TCT and you need a standard or a certification we don't have loaded, then we'll just go load it. And so it makes things substantively easier for the client base because they now don't need to worry about, geez, I've got the solution for this standard, but then I got this other solution for this standard. We just wanted to be able to have everybody use a consistent platform for managing their engagement. So they'll let us know as they have new ones. They'll let us know as they're hearing of new versions coming out, etc. And we'll just go ahead and kind of do the uplift. But market-wise, the portal's intended to serve as a single solution for organizations.
And what are some of the existing data control solutions falling short
that they need
of resolving
to go up
current
against, fulfill,
compliance
track,
issues
and
in
manage
this
against,
arena? And
etc.
how is TCT really helping your clients and customer base overcome these challenges?
There's a lot of various, like I said, there's a lot of tools that become standard specific, if you will. And for the players out there, a lot of it depends on kind of how the solutions came about. Like some of them are built by non-security and compliance people that think that they've got a bag of money and they can go solve a problem, but they don't have the operational capabilities to go in and use that expertise to build into the platform. Oftentimes there's disconnects between the operational business comprehension that there even is an issue and that they need to invest in their program. There's a number of things in that arena, in that space that kind of play into it and where they come up short, but I almost see it as the solutions themselves coming up short of the fulfilling those needs. And on the other side, the organizations that really need or should be kind of paying attention to their security, their compliance, and whatnot, really comprehending the value of what they're doing. In some cases, it's interesting when you get talking to folks, them even recognizing that they've got a problem. One of the biggest things that I feel like that we've been kind of warring against, if you will, from the early days, is that there's a lot of organizations that will take this approach that I have IT people or I've got this outsourced IT vendor, so they must know how to do this stuff properly. And the stark reality is that for day-by-day IT people, a lot of them, it's just not a realm of exposure that they have or get. Certainly if they have had some exposure, it's usually in a limited form and kind of not broad scope. So it's really tough for organizations to get.
So looking down the road a little bit, how are you helping companies prepare for,
to be able to bring that
dare I
into
say, 2030 and mid-century?
Probably one of the bigger problems too. There's a couple of things. The one interesting part about TCT, when we first launched back in 2015, we had a list of enhancements that we knew we wanted to go do with the platform. But what was interesting about kind of how things evolved over the course of, because if you think about it, the system's been up running live for the past decade. And one of the things that started to happen really quickly is that we had clients basically coming to us and saying, hey, can you put on a feature that does this? Can you add this functionality? Hey, I've got a great idea. And within a relatively short period of time, those inputs then started to become the entirety of what we would go ahead and issue in each of our functional releases. So over that period of time, I don't expect anything to be different as we move forward. We've been in a state of kind of continuous improvement. Some of the things that that TCT is heading towards as an organization is certainly higher levels of automation. higher levels of kind of intelligence that can be brought into the tool. As I've been going down this path, I had some fun playing with the notion, right? We had for a while there, and especially, I don't know, it seems like especially about 18 to 24 months ago, we had a lot of people that turned into kind of AI zombies, right? Is the way I like to put it. If it said AI in it, that it must be cool. And it could be cool if it's done right. I had some fun playing around with a notion of automated intelligence, and as my acronym for AI, where there's a lot of things that you can do if you understand the space. There's a ton of things you can do with automated intelligence to facilitate and assist and streamline. TCT has been working a lot on automated intelligence enhancements to the platform and moving into the arena of true AI integration into the platform as well is another thing that we're heading into. But most certainly at the end of the day, regardless, I'm not a giant fan of the buzzwords. I don't instantly start zombifying myself, if you will. Instead, it's really about what do we really need to do to make these people's lives better?
Let me turn to the resource section of your website.
Do it in a way that's appropriate, that's right, that's got them where they need to be in an
the
efficient
difference
manner.
in many companies' marketing strategies, and I don't know if this is a fair characterization of what you have on there, but you have blogs, you have podcasts, you have white papers, you have case studies, you have such a wide variety of information to share. And I wanted to maybe ask you, why have you chosen to invest that? Now, you've told us a little bit earlier, you really enjoy helping people, and that's certainly a legitimate and valid reason for that. But it can also be used for marketing, or it could be used for some other reason. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about your philosophy on the information you provide literally at no cost?
Yeah. We started actually the blog. I think we started the blogging back in 2018. So that's been going for quite some time. We've been shooting for trying to put out material once a week. The podcast we've been doing now for about four plus years or so. The case studies, we'll pop those out as we can. But the philosophy behind it really was, again, to help people understand, help people get educated. It's been fun because I've had a lot of conversations with folks that got into an organization, were kind of thrust into the position of needing to be internally responsible for compliance, and being able to direct them over to the resources that we have over especially on the blogs. We've got topics on darn near anything in the security and compliance space. And so I'm able to use those to assist those folks that are boots on the ground. Yes, we can use it as supporting information for answering questions of either existing clients or prospects, assisting folks that are just trying to get into the space. It's one of the things that drove me nuts back in the day was that there really wasn't a plethora of information out there for folks to go to get, especially a plethora of information that was written in a manner that was just understandable. That was not written. It wasn't written to try to bamboozle somebody, but instead was written.
It's a great set of resources, and I would encourage everyone to
that
check
was really
that out.
The purpose behind
I certainly
putting
have.
the effort into the various resources.
Adam, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out more about total compliance tracking, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Sure. Getting to the website is a good spot. You can get there by going to gettct.com. That's a short form redirect over to totalcompliancetracking.com. Just
Adam, I
wanted
wanted to thank you again. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Or you can follow us on LinkedIn or on X. We are listed as GetTCT. Sounds great. Thanks, Tom, for having me. Appreciate it.